Welcome back to another edition of Kansas City Experience. I'm Aisha Downton. Ahead on this month's episode of KCX, we check in with special effects artist Jake Johnson and find out some of the history behind makeup effects.
The funny thing is the forehead piece of the creature is actually from a different project, and then the mouth was for a Fright Night personal project that I had done for a demo out in Los Angeles.
Barbecue has become a culinary competition and subject of much debate, but how did it originate? We look back at some of the forgotten history behind the origins of barbecue.
African Americans emerged from slavery with a competitive advantage in barbecue. It was just understood that the very best barbecue was going to be made by an African American.
Also this month, we learn how to make a Brazilian delicacy and log in for a virtual 90.9 The Bridge session with Jealous of the Birds. But we start this month with a look at efforts to aid the unhoused in Kansas City, explore some practical solutions, and discuss ways to address the root causes of homelessness.
What lives in these woods, supposedly lives in these woods, is deer, rabbit, not human beings. I semi-run this camp. I'm taking care of 14 people. Every day I make sure that they alive, they're warm at night, and they get up in the mornings. I caught first-degree frostbite of my thumbs. They're artificial from middle all on up to the tips of them. So I work my fingers to the bone sometimes to make that happen for my friends. One of the guys ran over to me. Hey man, you need to come on. 6 won't wake up. Okay, look right over here. Yeah. This is where I found 6. I've known him the 3 years that I was out here. The coolest, you know, outgoing, loving. It's just sad, man. It's really sad to lose a friend like that. We found him with his eyes open, okay, with his left hand over his chest, holding his heart. I broke down and I cried. I said, he's gone. That man did not have to freeze to death like he did.
There is not one single solution to homelessness or to housing crises. There's a lot of things that would have to happen at the same time to effectively end homelessness or housing crisis.
You know, for people who are on the streets, their lives are consumed by the activities of daily living that most of us take for granted. So knowing where you're going to sleep, where you're going to be safe, where you're going to be able to go to the bathroom, all of those things are preoccupations that really drain people. Trying to stay warm is absolutely exhausting, and that our folks are really in a state of sleep deprivation a lot of the time. Folks also need swift access to healthcare and behavioral health services. And we do find that for some folks, it's difficult to get into those programs. They have difficulty navigating systems, or there's long wait lists to be seen. Those temporary fixes are actually life-saving support for people that's needed.
We're standing here in the Bartle Hall Convention Center. It is the largest facility that we have in Kansas City. This is a site of our warming center for our unhoused population in not just Kansas City, but across the region.
We also have our beds with bed numbers, so we'll know which residents are here. Some are volunteers. We also have wheelchairs available for those that are handicapped. This is our food station.
One of the great benefits about having a centralized location like this is we have a critical mass of the population. We're able to better streamline and coordinate other related services.
So when I look at my people sleeping in snow, yet y'all want me to help pass a contract that codifies all rights away from the city, when it's extremely transparent that issues of the underserved population.
Shelters are wonderful things, but if that shelter can only have a capacity for a couple hours, then it guarantees that it's going to be a transient population. It's just by design. Volunteers are doing everything they can, but outside of the volunteers, It's wasteful taxpayer spending. When you talk about $500,000 for a month of allowing people to stay inside of a center for a few hours, that is not adequate. So when we talk about park and rec cleanup taxpayer dollars, we're talking about $60,000 to $90,000 each cleanup, 2 to 3 cleanups per year. So you do 3 or 4 sites, you at about $500,000. The same when we talk about services from PD, arresting people, taking them to jail, sending them back out. This is a lot of tax dollars that are being wasted.
I have been over trying to get wraparound services of these entities that are getting large sums of money to come down. I have been asking them to come down, set up a table, sit down here with these people. They're not coming down and they're getting quite a bit of funding. And these people are falling in the cracks.
Because grant making is a competitive process, providers are essentially fighting for scarce resources. And so it doesn't breed collaboration because essentially you're working alongside each other, but you're also rivals in some regard.
The way that emergency homeless services are set up almost require the constant presence of people who are homeless in order to be financially viable. Often you see nonprofits saying, oh, we served 40,000 meals. We housed 12,000 people last year. So you need the shelter filled every night in order to collect money to make your business run. So the business model is to keep homeless services filled rather than empty. If the incentives were you get paid for every person you put in permanent housing, it would drive the whole system in a whole other direction. We don't need this whole middle level, homelessness bureaucracy.
They got empty beds that people refuse because they can't come, they can't go, they lock down, and they can't. When you can't come and go as you will, man, you in jail. We get used like pawns, and they don't know us, they don't talk to us, and they constantly saying that they speaking for us, and they don't. They not us. Spending directly on the people that's impacted, not on the way that somebody else see fit, so they can get paid in the middle, and everybody trying to fix us. And we're not broke. The system is broke.
3 presidential candidates have now visited Kansas City. All of their trips here had one thing in common: the Veterans Community Project.
This village of tiny homes is solving veteran homelessness in Kansas City.
Everything that goes into the houses is all rooted in dignity first. These houses are designed to really speak to that trauma-informed care approach that we take. You get to completely exhale and just understand that it's just you and that 4 walls and a door. This is what a finished product looks like. Every single person that lives in this village has a very unique program that is designed specifically for them. These offices that we use, we got a medical suite, our dental suite, we got a learning lab down there, we have our fellowship hall, the dog wash room, all of those are in conjunction with partnerships that we have with local agencies around town. There's Bartle Hall, there's day warming centers, there's evening warming centers, and we need them desperately. But how can we capture those folks that are showing up to those places and immediately connect them to services and immediately connect them to a way to elevate out of that system of going from shelter to shelter. I would love to see this being done on a large scale for the entire population. Several folks on my leadership have met with city councilors and other lawmakers in this city that are thinking along these same lines.
A couple of the programs that we're working on involve the use of city-owned property, land bank property that we could use to build transitional and more permanent housing.
And the whole idea behind the Enclave is creating a tiny village of houses or buildings and make it resource heavy. So in the center of this area, you have a medical facility that we're looking to build. That medical facility will access behavioral issues and drug issues. We're looking to do it not in an isolated area of the city, but in the area of the city that is viable when it comes to transit, in which we can not warehouse people that are houseless or homeless, to provide people that are houseless or homeless a viable opportunity to work themselves out. In this scenario, what we're trying to do is create infrastructure and then create the regulation of that infrastructure. And the regulation of the infrastructure will be adequate contracts with service providers. These are all service providers that we typically don't engage in pinpointed effort, and it should have a positive budget increase.
You know, we really do need a much more coordinated community response to homelessness. And so that the trajectory for each person, when we engage them from the streets all the way to their final destination, that there's a much clearer pathway on that trajectory for each person that's tailored to meet their needs. And that requires really deep coordination and collaboration, but also with those ancillary supports that keep people, you know, sustainable and stable in their housing, as well as engaging with the systems that feed into homelessness. So the family court system, criminal justice, child welfare, all of those systems that, you know, essentially dump into homelessness.
So homelessness is actually one of those words that doesn't describe things, it actually covers things up. It covers up income disparity. It covers up lack of affordable housing, unequal racially biased opportunities for housing. It covers up so many structural problems. And then you have someone who falls out of a society that is unfair for a group of people and way too beneficial for a small group of people. And then they're called homeless, as if it's their problem. They didn't bring it on themselves. We, as a society, are creating homelessness every single day. We're manufacturing homelessness because of the structural inequities in our social system. Even if we ended homelessness in America today, 50,000 rooms in Kansas City, you know, like done, we're done with it. In 6 months, we'll have new homeless people because we haven't changed the structures that produce homelessness. You need better wages, affordable housing, support services for people who have mental illness and addiction. It's not very complicated, actually. It's not like we have to invent something to do it. We know how to do it, but there's no political will to do it.
But you want to put a Band-Aid over a shotgun wound just to say we did something. We need, you know, a place to live. We need safe, affordable housing, period.
Today, Art House takes you into the world of special makeup effects by way of Topeka's own Jake Jackson. That's right, Jackson's work can be seen in the locally lensed Kansas City horror film I Am Lisa, directed by the great Patrick Ray, and his work can be seen in the new horror film short Crockpot, directed by Kansas City's own Ty Jones.
Wanted to help you.
She does nothing. This wasn't just a kind gesture.
When Ty sent me the script, I immediately was like, oh my gosh, this is a freaking Tales from the Crypt episode. And I think that was my approach in terms of the creature, was to make something that was very visually interesting, because we were only going to see it for a few seconds, but I wanted it to be something that, you know, was kind of a gut punch. When you saw it, you were like, oh my goodness. It was actually a blend of a couple of prosthetics that I had laying around the shop. Actually, I used them for two different projects. The funny thing is the forehead piece of the creature is actually from a different project, which was I Am Lisa, was actually the Lisa werewolf prosthetic that I created for that. And then the mouth was for a Fright Night personal project that I had done for a demo out in Los Angeles at the Son of Monsterpalooza convention. They blended really well together. And then I just did a paint job of making it green and more monstery. There's just always something about the color green with monsters that kind of harkens back to childhood for me of, you know, green monsters, I guess. And then I did some special finger extensions and then prosthetics that went over the actors' hands so that we could have these really cool gangly fingers in a few of the shots. Ty and I had a great time working on it. I worked with Patrick Ray on that. He was one of the producers on it as well. So yeah, there's the cool thing is, like, it was just a really great collaborative process working with everybody. And, you know, all the people that we worked on with Crockpot, you know, they all became friends if they weren't already friends, and we've all worked on other projects and, you know, already planning on working on other projects post Crock-Pot.
Magic and wonder, and even something godlike about changing a human faith or an act or a person into something entirely different.
I am an advanced student of Dick's. I'd always admired his work. The very first makeup book I ever got, when I was 17 years old, was Dick Smith's How to Do Makeup that he had created originally for Famous Monsters of Filmland, which was kind of like the book that got Rick Baker started.
It's alive! It's alive! You feel like you've actually created this person.
Dick was very good about telling his secrets to everybody.
There are a lot of misconceptions in film makeup. One of them is that Marlon Brando had cotton stuffed in his cheeks for The Godfather. Not true. We made a dental plumber, which hooks in around the guy's molars, and it goes something like this, but of course it doesn't fit me.
So many people at that time, when Dick first started, were very secretive. It was all very Hollywood-based. It was all mechanical. It was like you were part of this shop.
What have I ever done to make you treat me so disrespectfully?
He pioneered a lot of the techniques that we used now. I mean, we still use. There's it's called an overlapping foam latex mask. Before Dick Smith came along and realized, hey, I can break down this sculpture into multiple pieces that can overlap each other, and you can get much more of an articulated face out of it. Everybody would just make one whole mask and try to glue it on. Well, when you use the material latex, or in this case foam latex, it shrinks. So then you have to pull and all this other stuff. So he really revolutionized that. I mean, Dick was an innovator. I mean, it wasn't just him being a brilliant makeup effects artist. He really innovated and said, what can I look at this thing and this thing? What can I do to put these together to make something interesting? There's a makeup that we use called Pax Paint, which stands for Pros-Aide and Liquitex. And what Dick Smith did was he took a medical adhesive that's white, but when it dries, it's translucent, so you can't see it. But he figured if I put acrylic paint in there, I can make a paint that will hold and really seal these foam latex pieces. And we still use that to this day. But no, Dick Smith's makeup is, revolutionary. I actually did a tribute makeup last year about this time of The Exorcist, because I was always a huge fan of it, and it was so simple in its final execution. The history of makeup, to me, it's important to know the history, whether it's Dick Smith, or you go back to look at John Chambers, who did Planet of the Apes, or even Lon Chaney and Jack Pierce. If you don't know that lineage of where these ideas and these processes came from, then I think you're missing out on the opportunity to excel yourself. Me going forward, I'm going to continue to do short films. I'm trying to get, obviously been doing a lot more producing and stuff like that, trying to help out with productions, because ultimately my goal is to, write and direct and produce my own feature-length film, which I did just secure the rights to an author's book. My friend Andy Rausch, who's a novelist, we worked out a deal to where I'm going to be adapting his book, Until One of Us is Dead, into a feature-length film, which hopefully will be going to production in early 2022. So I'm just continuing wanting to work and collaborate with people that I love working with. Like I love working with Patrick. I love working with a lot of actors. So I get a lot of calls from those people like, hey man, they need makeup effects artists in this. So I think that the thing is like, we just have to be safer. We have to be more cognizant of what it is. But at the same time, we're filmmakers, we're storytellers. We're going to find a way to tell the story. We just have to do it in a much safer and more effective way so that, we can keep doing stuff. Cinema will never die. They keep saying, oh, it's going to change and it's going to die. It's like storytelling is universal, and all of us are still making stuff. We're all figuring out new ways to tell stories. And I think going forward, that's what we're all going to do, not just myself, but we're going to find ways to make movies.
Barbecue is Native American at its foundation. I think that gets glossed over. The typical barbecue history narrative talks about indigenous people in the Caribbean, but there's a lot of dots that don't get connected when we start talking about barbecue in the American South. How do we go from this raised platform in the Caribbean to this trench method in the American South? Because the trench method was not in the Caribbean, so something else is going on. Enslaved Native Americans were barbecue's first cooks, but because Indian slavery didn't work out, they transitioned to African slavery, and so then that's when enslaved Africans and then later enslaved African Americans become barbecue's principal cooks. You know, a lot of people start the story with Henry Perry, but if you look at kind of newspapers from the 1800s, it was clear that there were some barbecue events that were happening in that part of Kansas, you know, as early as the 1870s, maybe even earlier. And in many cases, barbecue came with slavery. African Americans emerged from slavery with a competitive advantage in barbecue. It was just understood that the very best barbecue was going to be made by an African American. So that competitive advantage they leveraged into having what I called freelance barbecue gigs around the country. And then when we go to this shift from kind of rural barbecue to urban barbecue, where you need more capital in order to have a barbecue business. And one of the long-standing problems for African Americans back then and even today is access to capital and freedom from other people to just, you know, start their business where they want to and grow their business how they want to.
Of course, we couldn't, at that time you didn't borrow money from the banks. You had vendor operators that was run by the vendor operating companies. So we borrowed the money from the jukebox vendor man, and he only had enough money to buy it and took the payment out of the jukebox that was in the place at the time. So that's how we got started, with a $500 jukebox loan and a lot of determination.
And the thing that really surprised me is how the way that Native Americans have been erased from the barbecue narrative is a template for what's happening to African Americans now. When white Europeans come to the American South and they see Native Americans cooking a certain way, they all call it barbecue. But then within 150 years, whatever Native Americans were doing is not barbecue anymore. What white barbecuers are doing is more and more being called the norm. And the best example of this is sauce. You'll hear people say, oh yeah, real barbecue doesn't have sauce. African Americans will be like, say, who says? Sauce is integral to African American barbecue culture. So because the drumbeat of what barbecue is being narrowed and narrowed, everything else is being pushed to the margins. Now, I criticize the American Royal for not being diverse in terms of its Barbecue Hall of Fame. And to their credit, they invited me on the board. And so the last 2 years, and it's not all me, I'm working with other board members who are like-minded. So we're getting more diverse classes inducted to the Barbecue Hall of Fame. And I'm proud to say that the very first African-American woman was inducted just this past year, but Desiree Robinson of Cozy Corner in Memphis. And there's just so many other people who need to get a shout out. So, you know, my thing is I'm just trying to remind people of the significant contributions that African Americans have made to barbecue culture, something that's been lost the last couple of decades.
Looking at somebody eat my food, I get a joy out of that. I smile about that, you know, especially if you think they're enjoying it. Yeah, and most of the time I get good compliments on it. Yeah, that always makes my day, I tell them, and it does, yeah.
Hi, my name is Jessica Harris. I'm a co-founder of Swikis Brigadeiro, and today we're going to show you how to make the classic Brigadeiro. So you're probably wondering, what is Brigadeiro? It is the most famous, popular, and loved sweet in Brazil. The ingredients are condensed milk, butter, cocoa powder, and cream. So we're going to start by adding the condensed milk. Then we're gonna add the cocoa powder, a little bit of butter, because butter makes everything better, and cream. After about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how much you're making, you pour it in a container, and this is what it looks like. It's very thick and it's ready to be hand rolled. The milk chocolate is the most popular one. The reason why it's called Brigadeiro, because a brigadier in Brazil was running for office in 1945, and the ladies wanted to make something to raise money for his campaign, and so they combined the condensed milk with cocoa powder and became the most popular treat in Brazil ever.
The first one I'm going to play is probably the first song I ever properly wrote. Back whenever I was 18, and it's called Goji Berry Sunset.
sunset, that's how it all started. Sitting on the lakeside, talking about old times. Arms laced with red thread, forget the things that I said. Quote a line from Tennyson, poetry is medicine. Your name, your fizzes on my tongue. Your name, your fizzes on my tongue. Damn that name. Walk through the bluebells, pollen dust and pastels. Bury the Bible, now you're being triable. Told too many bad jokes, sherbet laughs and cold coke. Maybe you're my favorite, I like the beard, don't shave it. With your name, your fizzes on my tongue. Your name, your fizzes on my tongue. Your name, fizzes on my tongue. Damn that